shouldn't be negotiated privately in dark rooms. They must be available for people to access and see. But going back to Mbali, the have an issue in Ekurhuleni doesn't mean the residents of Johannesburg must pay for that, or the residents of Tshwane. We must deal with these things in terms of residents, and residents live in the metros, and that's why we will deal with each agreement on its own merits. In terms of the what? I think that was about the motions, right? The thwarting of voices and yes. Well, I mean, let's be clear. We ran a public survey with 30,000 respondents who said that going into coalition with those parties was not possible. And that's specifically what we will be governed by as an organization. And I mean, we will continue to point people there when you ask us that question, because we must be guided by structures and ordinary South Africans who want to see ActionSA going in a particular direction, and for whom we don't have the right to alienate their trust and do something fundamentally different. Remind me, Kosikona, the thwarting of voices?
So if one of your big problems is that councillors at the local level.
Thank you. Sorry, you reminded me. Thank you very much. So in other words, the issue here is that local councillors in these coalition agreements they are at the coalface. They know what residents need, and they know how to make their governments work. Every day they live and die on how many numbers they have in their coalition. And they understand what building a majority means, because they're the ones who go to councils, and either they get a majority of votes behind something or they don't. And I think we've seen, including on 702, by the way, I mean, you've had some revelations revealed there about mayors who are willing to do what's necessary to make these coalitions survive, and nationally they're being told no. And that's a problem for us, because I think the world model, best practice for coalitions is local management of coalitions. And I think had that been the case here, in many instances we would not have the challenges we have when people who are far removed, people who don't even live in Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, are sitting there saying, no, we mustn't do this and we mustn't do that, even though the consequence of what they're saying is certain defeat and motions of no confidence and an inability to pass budgets. And I think from our point of view, that is a big part of the problem. In Johannesburg, it's slightly different, though, remember, because there's a pathway to coalition that is involving, for example, the Patriotic Alliance in Johannesburg. The coalition is only 7 votes short of a majority now. They have 8, I think it is. So, in other words, there's a pathway to re-establish a majority there. And, you know, let's be frank, the situation with the ANC and EFF arrangement blowing up, you know, puts the Patriotic Alliance in no man's land right now. And the ability to reach out to them and see whether they are willing to get back on board is going to be an important question. But you are right, ActionSA is seized by the fact that there must be a plan to produce a majority. And I'm very glad to say that that is being worked upon in Johannesburg, and that's why we will support that and drive that at every turn. But what we can't handle is just no plan. You know, we're just going to wait for our fate to be delivered to us. That's not a plan. And I think, as is often said in the world of strategy, hope is not a strategy. And we can't be surviving on hope. We have a duty to our residents to make sure we put in place the plans that ensure these governments last 5 years. And I'm sorry to deviate slightly here, but there's a reason why. Governments lasting 5 years is not about, you know, us being in positions. I mean, you've seen a guy forego his position voluntarily here. Even though there's personal impact in his life, he's doing what he believes is right for the residents of Ekurhuleni. But at the end of the day, we have to ask, how are we going to turn these cities around if we can only govern for 9 or 10 months at a time? Bongani refers quite correctly to a serious problem of municipal officials who don't understand where the authority lies in the executive. Is it going to be this party this week or that party? These are serious challenges, especially in an environment where municipal officials need to be led from a strategy direction point of view. And that's why we're saying we've got to have active measures to ensure 5-year terms of government. And then I think to deal with the business day questions, The methodology of the poll was telephonic. It involved calling 3,000 residents of Ekurhuleni with a survey that asked a variety of questions. At a 90% confidence level, the margin of error in that poll is 3%. And I think you're seeing national polls produced on less than 3,000 respondents. So from an Ekurhuleni standpoint, that's a very credible poll. But I also think it's quite important when you're asking someone a question, are things going in the right direction and wrong direction? We're asking for the last 12 months specifically. And those are very straightforward questions. They're not complicated. There's no hidden meaning behind them. And I will invite people who want to engage in a debate on this issue today to invite people of Ekurhuleni into this conversation. You had one individual here talking about the situation on the ground. Let's have conversations with people in Ekurhuleni, because what you often see in a debate like this is people in other municipalities, or not even in the province, laying down opinions about what ActionSA is doing here. And wouldn't it be great if we actually heard the residents of Ekurhuleni in asking them what they're experiencing on the ground? And I think if you, as members of the media, take that approach, you will find that what we're producing in the survey is consistent with what you will experience as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. I think, Bongani, you've got a few.
Thank you. First, let's deal with the motion of no confidence. On the Speak of Johannesburg, I can provide the following update that the Rules Committee set today to determine whether the motion would be accepted or not, and the motion against the Speaker of Council is rendered inadmissible. So that's the latest news coming. Because of Rule 92.3, which is the reason why they said the motion against the Speaker at this stage is inadmissible. So we'll apply our minds as a caucus to apply our minds on the reasoning of the Rules Committee that's set today, and we'll take it from there. So that's the latest news. Why did we put in a vote of no confidence against her? I mean, the procedure followed to have a vote of no confidence against the mayor, which the court described in a particular manner, and also put the city in limbo for a couple of weeks, where you had some mayors and not a mayor, and etc. I think that alone, and the consequences, the decision making of the city, decisions made by those who were the executive at that point, there's serious implications for the city. And I think that could have been avoided by simply following the rules. Simple as that. And not following rules cost us a lot of discomfort to residents of the city and put the city in jeopardy, and creating a situation of uncertainty in the city. So on the issue, I think our chair is quite clear. We're not in the coalition with the DA in Ekurhuleni. However, our votes are available to engage with them on issue-by-issue basis, and we'll apply our minds carefully on that. And in the event there is a vote of no confidence, we'll certainly ensure that we vote for the coalition. And as somebody say, I think they're the better devil. So the situation you have here is ANC or the better devil. Unfortunately, we had to vote for a candidate whom we believe has capacity issues, lack of capacity to run such a sophisticated institution in Gauteng. And as a consequence of where we are, we had to accept that these are the limitations we are working within. It would have been much better if the DA had said to us, we've got a different candidate. But the DA felt it's important for them to support, as they have always done, the same candidate as was subject to a vote of no confidence. They throw their confidence behind their candidate. So we're placed in a really difficult position. So for us, it wasn't a decision of amongst angels, which is a better angel. It was who's the worst devil, who's a better devil in this case. And equally, our interest is keeping the ANC out. The longer the ANC is out of these executive seats in government and not responsible for patronage and corruption, the more we're able to compete with them in a meaningful way on the ground, because all of us will be subject to the same environment. There won't be anybody who has got an advantage as a consequence of patronage, corruption, and a number of those things. And that's important to ensure that we keep them out as long as possible so we can have fair and free elections, which is very competitive. The issue on Mayor Randall, the report was tabled at the coalition meeting, and the report, what it did, it said on the issue of transgressions against the MFMA, when it looked at that one item that was tabled before council, it said the Mayor Randall did not contravene the MFMA. But what it did not further do is actually say at the point the process of Kratos started in 2019, and the recordings, which makes it material, because what it does, the report, it says the mayor also transgressed the code of conduct of councillors and also the delegations of council by involving himself in things in procurement which he should not involve himself in. But if the investigator had actually done a step further and actually considered the matter from 2019 until now, not just one item of council which related to the public process of going to public, soliciting public views, which is actually linked to the process of procuring from, in an unsolicited bid approach, procuring from the Kratos people. So the next step for us is a report, a complaint by ourselves to be filed to the Speaker of Council in Tshwane. So a council process investigates the matter substantively, over and above just looking at that one council item, but to look at when the matter originated. And what gives us comfort is that there is something for the mayor to account there in that process, is the fact that already there's two findings, one saying he transgressed the code of conduct of a councillor, and number two, that he's also transgressed the delegations of council. And I think that becomes very material. And we're using the council process because we know now there's a finding which must be ventilated through a council process, and we believe that will extract accountability and be able to demonstrate to South Africans that we are serious about this accountability. What have I not responded to that you've left out? Oh, yes. Look, the piling rubbish, just like potholes, just like water leaks all over, and every part of visible service delivery is as a direct consequence of the financial position the city finds itself in. In the first 2 months of the current financial year, the city lost in excess about 3.2 billion rands due to Eskom. So obviously, when you lose so much revenue, potential revenue in the first 2 months, it affects, it affects delivery of services, visible service delivery, refuse collection, tarring of roads, water leaks, every part. That's why you'll see Ekurhuleni in the manner that is in, but not just because of the 3.2 billion rands in the first 2 months, but equally of historic matters, but equally of lack of management properly and proper leadership that governs such a complex institution of government. So we need to remedy the financial issues first, which means collection of revenue, protection of revenue, and leadership making the difficult decisions it has to make. But equally, remember this budget, we also advise that the projection in terms of the current budget collection rate, which was built on, it's too low. For a metro, you can't build a budget for a metro on an assumption of 88% collection rate. It's really difficult because you need such a metro to be an engine of development, facilitation of development, deploying of serious capital into investment on infrastructure. And this is already showing that they can't even meet that obligation. And we're saying that, we need to provide a realistic budget to council to consider that part. Did I cover those that weren't covered? Well, for us, we're quite clear that the reason for that is the fact that there was a judgment. She presided over a process that elected a mayor illegal. That cost the city money, and it brought the city in limbo for that amount of days. Imagine the executive that sat and presided over an executive and made decisions which can be legally and binding or could be overturned as well. And imagine what that means for other decisions as well under that period. So that action alone brought the city under disrepute and really created a period of uncertainty and instability. And I think there has to be consequences for that. We can't